In today's episode, I am honoured to be joined by my friend Kirsty Capes, who is the author of the beautiful coming-of-age novel, Careless.
The biggest surprise for me has been the reception that the book has gotten. None of it has sunk in. It doesn't feel real at all. I wanted to write a book that felt very true to the care experience that I had and felt like something that other people in care could identify with. Being able to advocate for yourself is so important. One of our sort of hashtags is nothing about us without us. I wanted it to be a love story, but not a romantic love story, a love story between these two girls and how much they care for each other unconditionally. People don't understand how important these relationships between girls are. There's so many signs that I felt were telling me, you know, it wasn't going to happen and also that no one was going to read it. And I was kind of at the point where I'd almost given up on it. And then
in today's episode, I am honoured to be joined by my friend Kirsty Capes, who is the author of the beautiful coming-of-age novel, Careless. Now, despite the name of her debut novel, you'll struggle to find someone who cares more than Kirsty. She is a truly beautiful human who I have always found to be so eloquent with her words. And I'm certainly not the only person who thinks this, as her writing is admired and celebrated by many. I am so grateful to be able to welcome Kirsty into this community today. She's an absolute gem of a human. She is most definitely my kind of person, and I know she will be your kind of person too. So welcome to the podcast and community, Kirsty Capes. Welcome.
Oh my God, what an introduction. That's so lovely. Thank you.
You're so welcome. We can put it on a voicemail for you if you like.
Yeah, please. Yeah. I will have that as my voicemail.
Ringtone every time someone calls. But all true, genuinely. So welcome. I'm so happy to have you. Or should I say Dr. Kirsty Capes? Because congratulations on finishing your PhD. As well.
Yes, thank you. I am a doctor. I don't like to use well, I put it on my Amazon parcel sometimes. But I think I had one. I'm kind of like, I'm not sure if I like want to advertise it, but also like if someone brings it up, I'm not going to say no, kind of thing. And I was on the phone to like my energy supplier, and it was just like a survey or something. And the guy at the end of the call, he was like, "Oh, thank you. Is it Miss or Mrs. or Ms. or whatever?" And I was like, "Actually, it's Doctor." And I was like, "Amazing. Oh, okay, Dr. Capes." I was like, "Yes, thank you very much." Didn't know that it's like a doctor of philosophy, not a medical doctor. But I'm not gonna emphasize.
No, own it. You have worked for that. That's super impressive. So I love it. And congratulations, because you were doing that whilst working and writing a novel, I believe.
Yes, quite a lot.
Quite the impressive doctor. So yeah, own that where you can, especially on your delivery parcels. I think that's an excellent use of the name. I love it. And my goodness, what a journey you have been on since we last spoke. And there's actually lots to celebrate since we last spoke, because Careless has recently been longlisted for the Women's Prize 2022. Mm-hmm. Incredible.
Absolutely batshit. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, like how do you feel about it? Like, has it sunken in yet? What an achievement.
No, not really. So like all of these things keep happening and I'm like, surely not. And like, what's really weird is like, I spent a really long time writing the book. It took me like 5 years to write, and it took me a really long time to find an agent and a really long time to find a publisher. And I cannot tell you how many rejections, like both hands, both feet. And I haven't counted all my rejections. I had so many. And it kind of got to the point where I was like, this book is trash, and like everyone is telling me that it's trash, and I need to accept that and move on.
Yeah.
And then like, I was kind of at the point where I'd almost given up on it. And then it happened, and like I got a publishing deal. So, and I also work in publishing. So I was like, this is amazing. I've got a publishing deal. It's going to be published. But I also know how it goes in publishing as well. I know that, like, you know, a lot of books that I work on, you know, get put out, like they get a little bit of, you know, attention when they come out, and then they're very quickly forgotten, unfortunately. And that's just like the way it goes because, you know, there are so many books that are published every day. They can't all be bestsellers kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I was kind of thinking to myself, like, you need to manage your own expectations. You know, you need to be prepared for it not to be this like amazing, like life-changing experience. And then like it wasn't that, but in some ways it was as well. And, you know, I think the biggest surprise for me has been like the reception that the book has gotten, because I think so there were so many signs that I felt were telling me that it you know, it wasn't going to happen, and also that no one was going to read it if it did happen.
Yeah.
Or even if they did, it wasn't going to, you know, like shoot the lights out or anything. And yeah, the response has just been so above and beyond what I could ever have hoped for in my wildest dreams. So it's been really lovely and really humbling as well, but also just kind of like none of it has sunk in. It doesn't feel real at all. It
Yeah.
feels like it's happening to someone else and I'm sort of observing it as an outsider.
Well, it is happening, and so well deserved as well. And it's amazing how things can like really take off. Like
Yeah.
you said, it was such a long and writing a book is very, I imagine, must be a very lonely process as well.
Oh my God, yeah, massively. So I think when I first started writing it, I started writing it when I was at uni. And that part wasn't so lonely because, you know, I did a creative writing degree. So I was very much like among my people, and, you
Mm,
know, we we would workshop stuff with each other all of the time. And we were constantly reading each other's work and, you know, sharing ideas and stuff, like my classmates, and then just like my sort of friends who I made out of my degree and stuff. And then I think when I left uni, I really had to kind of like work to find my own way of, you know,
mm,
my own sort of writing community, because it wasn't kind of being handed to me on a plate. And I think with that, I did really struggle. It does get really, really lonely. And I
mm,
think it is important to have like that alone time when you're writing, because like the way that I write is I think a lot of the time I have to kind of go quite sort of like into myself to like get to the sort of emotional truth of what I'm trying to do.
mm,
And you have to be kind of alone to do that, and you have to be with your own thoughts and stuff. But then
yeah,
at the same time, you also have to have like other people to bounce ideas off of, other people to kind of, you know, validate you, to be
yeah.
accountable to. So I think finding that balance was quite hard. And I'm a very like externally motivated person as well. So having it all handed to me at uni and being like, here are your deadlines, here's your homework, here's, you know, the people that you have to workshop with, that was all great. And then kind of when I had to start doing it myself, I was like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this. I don't have any of these skills. So
Yeah.
yeah, I had to work quite hard, I think, to get there.
Definitely, yeah, because then all the structures change once you're out of uni,
Yeah.
and you know, and then actually kind of very much out on your own in the real world as well,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
without that same immediate community right there with you, like you say. And then to be working on something for so long on your own, and then trying to find publishers and people to support the book on your own, and then all of
yeah,
a sudden have this kind of snowball effects of things happening. I imagine that must be quite overwhelming.
yeah, really strange. Yeah.
But
But yeah,
incredible.
I think like the other thing is like finding like mentorship as well, because I think having, you know, being kind of working among your peers, and, you know, for me, that was other kind of aspiring writers who were like working on their first book, who were looking for a publisher, but also being able to have support from people who've already been there and done that and kind of know what the ropes are, and also can tell you like quite honestly like this is good and this is shit as well. I think it was really important to have a thick skin and like take criticism from my betters when it was given, and, you know, learn how to interpret that in my work as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something in my full-time job, I coach. I'm a coach.
Yeah.
And it's so, I, as a coach, I coach people, but I have a coach myself. I think it's always so important to have people that you can look up to that are a few steps ahead of you.
Yeah, definitely.
Can like not only like aspire to be, but learn from them, not only what's made them successful, but learn from their mistakes as well.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
also, like you say, like a big part of learning is being able to take not just criticism, but more like feedback, and take that constructively and want to kind of learn and do better. I think that's so important.
Yeah.
So congratulations, and for your debut novel as well. What an achievement. Just unbelievable. And it's truly a beautiful, beautiful novel, and so well deserved. Before we learn more about your incredible writing, Kirsty, and the heartwarming novel that is Careless, I'd love for the listeners to learn a little bit more about you as a person. And I thought it'd be nice to start with how we actually cross paths. So do you want to share how we met each other? Because I think me and Steve, who was on the podcast a few episodes back, that we are both friends with, we worked out, I think it's been like 15 years, which is crazy.
Don't tell me that. That is really depressing. I didn't know it was 15 years. Oh no.
Yeah. Near about. So 15
my
years
word.
Cast from memory back. How did we cross paths?
So I remember being, I think I was 14 years old when I started that job.
Yeah.
And we worked in a school, and basically after the school hours, so I think it was kind of like Friday nights and then Saturdays and Sundays, there was a company that came into the school and hosted children's birthday parties.
Yeah.
And they hired a bunch of teenagers to help run these birthday parties. So Meg and I and Steve and a few others would go in on a Saturday and a Sunday, and we would run these birthday parties for, it must have been anything from like 5 to 12 years old or something.
Yeah, some of the kids are quite old.
Yeah, and some of them were really young as well. I think I struggled more with the younger ones than the older ones.
Yeah, I guess like not quite the same rapport.
Yeah.
They didn't have quite the same
world events. They didn't get my jokes.
No, exactly.
So we did roller skating birthday parties, football birthday parties, kind of like soft play.
Yeah.
And it was all very like low budget, and I feel like probably we broke a lot of health and safety rules and stuff.
That was our niche, low budget. Yeah. But we
£4 an hour, more than I got at the chip shop, so I was very happy with that.
Yeah, but we always won the enthusiasm award.
That's 100%. Yeah. And actually, do you know what I really liked is that we were all a similar age. I think you and I must have been on the younger end when we started, and then Steve was like, I don't know, 19 or something.
Yeah.
And then we got a bit older, and then they got some more kids in.
Exactly.
I remember being very, very excited.
Life, these lot.
Yeah. But I tell you what, though, I could not do that job now. There is absolutely no way. On your feet for like, what, I don't know, 8 hours a day, constant high enthusiasm with the kids, having to manage the parents as well. Oh my goodness. And then, having to take it all down at the end of the day, which I think was the worst part of the job. I
think we all just like excelled and took a good 10 minutes to like pep up. To have to absolutely fold away that bouncy castle.
Oh my God. The bouncy castle and the crash mats as well. Heaving those crash mats into that cupboard, which they were way too big to be in.
Yeah. And we my goodness. Like the Sandman by the end of it.
Oh my God.
And also, it's important to note the bouncy castle, putting that away is an effort in itself, but then to actually take the bouncy castle to the container outside I feel like we'd end up lying.
Oh my God, the container! I forgot about the container. Oh my God, you've like uncovered a repressed memory for me.
And we had the trolley with one of the wheels didn't work.
Oh my word!
Going like right, so it's like,
oh my
there's
God,
the container straight ahead, and we'd just be going slowly right, and then it would take about half an hour just to lie on the bouncy castle and contemplate life.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
When I say humble beginnings, we really do mean
that. It was, yeah.
A long way.
Yeah. I tell you what, though, I feel like that job was really formative for me. Yeah. I think it taught me that I'm not sure I've ever worked as hard, like physically, as I did in that job. Yeah. Apart from maybe I when I was at uni, I did bar work in a nightclub, and that was a similar level of like physical, being on your feet. Yeah. But then it wasn't like the heavy lifting that we had to do.
Exactly. And little kids running around
dealing with the kids
is similar to adults on WKD.
Yeah. Similar level of like body fluid, similar noise, like, oh yeah, God, the worst.
Coordination.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. And I think it was such an important lesson as well, because not everyone has like that kind of income to have a birthday party, and people's birthdays are once a year. And as a kid, some of these kids, like, that's the one big birthday party they'd have, and that's such a big deal. So it was such a good lesson in, like, no matter what's going on with you or how tired you were, like, that was that
you just had to be on
day that they wanted all year to have. And some of those kids might be, let's say, for example, I'm one of 4. We had like one big birthday party, and that was kind of
that's your lot. So
it was a really big deal, and I think that was a really good lesson in being able to really show up and also realize what's important and turn that enthusiasm on as well. And
definitely. And I think we did a good job.
I think we did well. We've turned out okay. Like, one of us is a doctor. I'm still folding away bouncy castle. No.
Oh gosh.
I've moved up a little bit in the world. But yeah, we definitely had humble beginnings. And where have you grown and flown? So where would you consider home? Where did you grow up, and where would you consider home to be now?
That's interesting. So I grew up in Shepperton, which is not far from where you grew up, and also where we did our kids' birthday parties. And I stayed there until really recently. So I only moved out of my parents' house like last year, and I moved to Slough. So I now live in Slough. But I do catch myself saying, if I'm going to go and visit my parents, I'm like, oh, I'm going to come home. And I'm like, no, Kirsty, it's not home anymore. You need to get it out your head. And I've got a dog, and when he's here with me, but if I have to like go into the office for like a full day or something, I take him over to my mum's, just so he's not like left on his own for ages. And we have a bit of a tug of war about where's home for the dog and stuff like that. But yeah, so I don't know. I would say that home to me is still probably Shepperton, but I don't know how long that's going to last. Yeah. Because I think soon, I'm going to feel like a big girl. Yeah. And, have my own home.
Yeah, but that's so nice. Obviously, the attachment there, and the people that you love are there, and you feel at home with them. So, really
definitely
nice way to look at it. And Shepperton is a special place. So where in that journey from Shepperton to Slough, and all the wonderful things you've done in between, where did you start to develop your passion for writing? Were you always into writing? And when did writing novels, I guess, become a main focus for you?
Yeah, so I think I think I was probably always into writing in different ways. So I think the thing I remember most vividly, like the first, I had to answer a question recently that was like, "What's the first thing you remember writing?" And I had to really think about it. And I was like, "What was it?" And I think it was I had to write in like year 7 at school, that we did like the creative writing bit of English, and everyone had to write a story. And I wrote this like really epic, like 10-page handwritten story about like a magical chessboard that was made of like bronze or something, or copper. And I remember being so proud of it. And I gave it to my teacher, and it was like one tick at the end, like, "Oh, I've skimmed it," and like, well done, tick, off you go. And I was like really waiting for like this is amazing, this is a masterpiece, you're a genius, and it didn't come. So then I was like, well, I need to like keep writing, and I loved it so much. I really enjoyed doing that. I kept a diary when I was in secondary school, and then actually looking when I moved out of my parents' house, I was going through all of the boxes under my bed and stuff, and I found all of them, and I skimmed through a couple of them, and I was like, oh my God, I can't bear to read them because they're so cringe. But then I couldn't bear to throw them out either. So I've kept all of them. And then actually when I was going through them, I was like, a lot of this is like very familiar to me. And I realized that all of it sounded like Bess from Careless.
Wow, that's so special. Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's where she came from. And then, yeah, so I think I went through a phase of wanting to be a journalist. So it was always kind of like vaguely, like I was always writing. I had like a really bad poetry blog when I was in college. And I think actually I did like a sort of extracurricular in college, which was like creative writing. And I think that was like the first time I realized that you could do creative writing as like an academic subject.
Yeah.
And then I think that was the point where I was like, right, I want to like go all the way with this. I want to do creative writing at uni. I want to write. This is what I want to do. So I just went down the road with it, and ended up doing a BA. I was writing a lot of short stories, and then finished my BA. Decided I wanted to do an MA. And then I think when I started my MA, I had a lot of material just where I'd built it up. Not so much when I was in college and earlier than that, because it was just, like training wheels. But a lot of the stuff I'd written during my undergraduate, I wrote a lot of short stories, and I had this idea in my head for a novel, which was kind of, very, very loosely based on my experience of growing up in care, because I grew up in foster care, and I'd always had this idea, just like, this abstract idea that, oh, maybe I could write about growing up in care and what it's like.
Yeah.
And I went back through when I was starting my MA, the kind of dissertation for it was, 40,000 words of a novel, and, an outline for a novel. So I was kind of like, well, I need to have this, I need to have an idea ready. And I was going back through all of my old stuff and realizing that like most of my characters were care experienced, and it wasn't something I'd really like intentionally done, and I wasn't thinking in a really intentional or active way about writing care experience. Oh, here's Doug. He's come to say hi.
Experience, yes. Hello.
Yeah, so I wasn't thinking about writing about care in like a really intentional way. But then when I'd kind of collected all of my work together, I was like, oh, this is like a recurring theme that's going through again and again and again.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like a sign to me that I needed to write something about care. And that's really where I started with the book. And then, the more I sort of started planning and thinking about, okay, what's important to me? What can I write with authority on? I wanted to set set the story in Shepperton because I know it so well.
Yeah.
But also I think it's just I feel like Shepperton is so interesting because it's so like not one thing or another. You know, like it's not urban, it's not rural. I wouldn't even say it was suburban.
Yeah.
It's got like farm fields, but then it's got like the M3 cutting through the middle. Like it's so bizarre. So, and I was, you know, I know all of this weird history about Shepperton because they make you do it in primary school and stuff. Like, you know, that there was a train that crashed down the high street in like the 70s or something. Just went through the wall and just carried on down the high street.
My nan
So
kept that one quiet.
yeah, ask your nan about it. I bet she
Yeah.
knows about it. But so
No.
all of this stuff, I was like, this is just so interesting. And I was also like really into, in like a pretentious way, I was really into J.G. Ballard when I was at uni, and he was like born and raised in Shepperton, and he was really into like psychogeography.
Yeah.
And I think he was like on a lot of acid, but
Hopefully he wasn't driving the train.
But he writes about Shepperton in a really weird, like surrealist way, and like the landscape of the town becomes a character in the story. So I was really interested in all of that as well.
Yeah.
And then I was just really interested in mothers as well. Because of my own relationship with mothers. So that was kind of like the building blocks, and then it all sort of grew from there.
Amazing. And the novel that we're talking about that you're writing is called Careless. So could you tell us a little bit more about Careless? How you talked how that idea was kind of, you weren't necessarily planning that as a novel originally, but how did that kind of take shape, and what do you hope that Careless contributes to the world?
So I think, you know, it just started off in like a really kind of sort of selfish way that I was like, oh, you know, I've had an interesting life. Maybe I can write something. You know, as most writers do, they think they're like the most interesting people in the world. So that's kind of where it started. And then, you know, the further down the road I got with it, I was kind of thinking about it in more kind of like critical and academic ways about like the concept of care. And also, you know, this idea of a care experience canon. And I think so the sort of the two things I wanted to achieve really in relation to care with the book was, the first was that I wanted to write a book that felt very true to the care experience that I had, and felt very honest and felt like something that other people in care could identify with, because it wasn't really something I had found myself in like the literature I was reading, in the TV I was watching, you know, movies, etc. There are representations of care, but they're not really very true to life. And I want to be careful as well, because everyone goes through care in a different way. So everyone will have a different care experience. So I don't think Careless is a universal story when it comes to the care experience. It just feels very true to me. So that was kind of like the first thing. And then I think the second thing, which is more like when I got down the road with like my thesis and stuff, was this idea of representation. And I think that, you know, I think that care experienced people and care leavers are a marginalized group in the same way that, you know, being working class is a marginalized group. So I think it kind of transcends like gender, sexuality, ethnicity, but there is still, you know, if you go into the care system, you are at a statistical disadvantage for a certain like set of later life outcomes. So things like education, the justice system, substance abuse, alcohol, domestic abuse, all of these things which are kind of termed like in sociology as poor outcomes. These are all things that care experienced people are more susceptible to, just for the fact of them being in care. Like having that disruption is like is almost like a marker of, you know, being less likely to go to university, for example. So that's kind of like a statistical fact. but I felt that a lot of the literature around the care experience was almost like reinforcing those statistical facts without really interrogating them in any way.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time, the way that the media especially talks about care experience people can be quite dehumanizing, because there is this kind of overemphasis on the statistics and more likely for this to happen, less likely for this to happen, which I know I've just spouted, but I'm just doing it contextually.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
but so I think, so what we have is, there's these statistical facts. I think they're reinforced in terms of news media. These statistics are reiterated over and over again. And then I think what happens is that popular culture takes these and creates like a certain set of, perceptions around the care leaver or the care experienced child or the child in care. And what we get is lots and lots and lots of really negative portrayals about care experienced people in all of the popular culture that we consume and that we love. So I think the most obvious example, and the one that, I go back to all the time, and I think most people do, is Tracy Beaker.
Yep.
So
that popped in my head. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Embarrassing to admit, but it's true. Yeah.
Well, this is it. And it shouldn't be embarrassing. I think what's more embarrassing is that we don't have the breadth of representation that we need so that people don't automatically go to Tracy Beaker. And I think, so I really love Tracy Beaker. I have quite a complicated relationship with her. But I think there are lots of good things that came about in terms of how people think about care experienced people as a result of Tracy Beaker. But I think also that character has done a lot of harm to the care experienced community, because she reinforces, a litany of negative stereotypes about care experienced kids, being naughty, telling lies, being difficult, not being trusted around other children, not able to make friends, loads of other stuff. And I think that doesn't come from nowhere. That comes from these other things that get reinforced in other parts of, our culture and our society.
Yeah.
So what I really, really, really wanted to do was to kind of tell a story that acknowledged that, yes, care experienced children are at a disadvantage. Yes, they are probably going to have, certain difficult behaviors, certain challenges as a result of the trauma that they've experienced. But also, that doesn't mean that we have to write them off. These are human beings who have hopes and dreams and aspirations. And I think with Careless, I wanted to focus on the positives and the future rather than the negatives in the present.
Yeah.
And, Bess goes through her fair share of shit in Careless. And, I really didn't want to shy away from that. I didn't want it to be kind of like rainbows and sunflowers, because it's really not.
Yeah, and
but then at the same time, I didn't want it to be like a kind of poverty porn kind of story. I wanted there to be light at the end of the tunnel for Bess and for what she goes through. So yeah, I think I did that, which I'm really happy about. And I think now probably the next steps is just to find more stories like this and bring them to the mainstream. The ones that are not necessarily focusing on the negatives, and deliver a more of a nuanced representation of all of these different stripes of people that go through care.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think nuance is such an important word there. And that's something that the book covers so beautifully with so many different themes. And you have been such an incredible advocate, I think, for this. And I genuinely believe that having a care experience role model to look up to will both be life-changing and saving for many people reading your work who've had similar experiences, because not only has there been, I think what I find embarrassing is how few of these representations there are. But when we also do have these representations, like you say, it can kind of have not only negative connotations, but even though they've been written by some incredible authors, it's not authors that have that same experience. And I think that's another difficulty there that we prove as well, of actually having people that have that lived experience, because I've seen it in so many different walks of life. Like, we can have so many people we look up to, for example, so many authors we look up to, but for a young adult who is care experienced, to not only have a writer they look up to, but a writer that has had the same shared experience, that's just a different level of role model.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think there's a couple of things that are kind of pertinent to that as well. I think one is, in order to have more representation within the publishing industry needs to become more accessible to those marginalized communities. And I think it's not just care experience. I think it's any kind of marginalized identity you can think of. The access is not there, because I think in order to engage with the publishing industry, whether it's like, working inside of it, or, knowing how to query an agent, knowing what, mentorship schemes, bursaries, scholarships, etc. are out there for you, you already need to have like a certain level of privilege to access that, just to know where to look. So I think that's one thing. And then I think the other thing is you're totally right about, having care experience stories from care experience voices. And one of the things we say a lot, one of our sort of hashtags is nothing about us without us. So, being able to advocate for yourself is so, so important. I think especially in the care experience community, because a lot of the time, care kids aren't really able to talk for themselves. It's kind of everything is done via like advocacy, social workers, social services. There's lots of adults in a care kid's life that are speaking on behalf of them, and it's not very often that they get to use their own voice and their own words. So it's almost like even more powerful to be able to have someone who's been through care to like tell their own stories. So I think that's so important. But then I think also at the same time, that's not to say that like only care experienced people can write about care, because I think, like, God love Jacqueline Wilson. Jacqueline Wilson is not care experienced, but there are lots and lots of people who write really wonderful, powerful stories about care who aren't necessarily care experienced themselves. They're often sort of adjacent to care. They might be foster carers, they might have adopted, they might have grown up with a family member who was a foster carer, been a social worker, worked in children's services, etc. And I think all of that is really valid too. But I think we can't just have that. We also have to really centre care experienced voices, because I think that's the only way that we can, as you say, deliver nuance to these conversations that are happening around representation. It's like having a bit of everything. I think it's like that it can't just be like one and done. It has to be like a continuous like activism almost to get more stories out there.
Absolutely. I think when you do one and done, it seems almost like a token gesture.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think sometimes publishing is a little bit in danger of that, because it's so like trends oriented, and it's about like the next hot thing. Like, this year we're talking about climate change, next year we're talking about tidying up kind of thing. And then the year after that we're doing veganism. That's like the vibe in publishing. So it's like it takes a little bit of something extra to like break through that, and ensure that it's not like a trend oriented thing, and that it's something that is going to require like consistent work from inside and from outside of the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely it's come a long way, but there's still a long way to go. And nothing about us without us. That's so powerful. I'm going to remember that for a long time. I think it's true, right? It's that idea again of like, if you see it, you can believe it and you can actually be it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that also applies to things like consultation as well. Like, you don't have to have a care experience writer on every project that's got care in it, but paying people to consult on stuff is like a huge, huge step, which I think a lot of places are now doing. Getting a sensitivity reader, I think is so, so important if you're writing about like a background or a culture or an experience that you don't have any relationship with yourself. I think is so, so important.
Yeah. And it's just another level or layer of care that goes into your work as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Really represent a community, best of your ability. And like I said, for people that come from that background or those situations, that genuinely can be life changing.
Yeah.
Representation, or at least showing that people truly care about giving the most honest and well-rounded portrayal that they can. And like you said, that comes back to that nuance again of really showing the nuance of situations. Nothing is going to please everyone or going to represent everyone. Like you said, Careless is just one representation of the care experience. But that's why it's so important. The more experiences you can have, the more you're going to see that spectrum of experience. Well,
yeah, definitely.
Whereas when you have so few, there is almost that pressure for this novel to be that to be the care experience for everyone, because they've got so few resources to go off. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it applies to other identities as well. I think, it's only very recently that I could walk up to the street and like walk up to someone in the street and ask them to, name a Black woman writer, and they could think of someone other than like Zadie Smith, for example.
Yeah.
And I think it's a testament to, the work that publishing's doing. But yeah, it's also like a huge responsibility for those people as well to kind of have the have the identity of a whole community kind of foisted upon them, because they've been, selected by, the zeitgeist as the sort of the spokesperson for that community. But yeah, so yeah, I think a long way to go, but hopefully we'll get there with lots of work, slowly and surely.
Definitely. And I think you've just done such a beautiful job with Careless, and you've just been such an incredible advocate, as shown through exactly what you've just said and shared, and really trying to have more of a well-rounded offering, I guess, for people, and makes them think and see a different perspective that maybe they've seen before. And another one of my favorite themes to come from Careless is female friendship. And I think you portray this beautifully between your characters, because I think female friendship is such a special kind of love. And it's something that I personally really crave to see more of. I think often the focus is on romantic love and not love between friendships. And I really do wish that healthy female friendships and the nuances that come with it were portrayed more in the media. So what does friendship mean to you in your life, and why did you feel it was important to put this type of relationship at the forefront of your novel?
Yeah, so I think, you're totally right. I think female friendship is like one of the most underrated things when it comes to like relationships. It's so underrated. People don't understand how important these relationships between girls are, especially teenage girls. I think teenage girl friendship is like the most powerful thing ever. It's so strong. Sometimes I think it's stronger and more powerful than romantic relationships, like first loves. And I think that's like something I was very keen to explore in the book. I wanted it to be a love story, but not a romantic love story, a love story between these two girls, and how much they care for each other unconditionally. And I think it was a reflection of my experience of female friendship when I was growing up, and some of the e-shows in my life, and those relationships which were so formative for me. And I think also I wanted to write a female friendship that wasn't necessarily like super toxic, because I think sometimes it can tend towards the toxic in some of our sort of favorite media. So I think there was like a real moment for toxic female friendship in like the noughties, when you look at stuff like, especially on TV. So like Gossip Girl is like a massive one. Pretty Little Liars, all of these like soapy American dramas, Desperate Housewives, all of these girls hated each other. They were like best mates, but they all fucking hated each other. And like, I just wasn't about that. So and I understand, because girls do hate each other as well. Like, let's not erase that, because that's a real thing too. But also, like, what about all of the other stuff? What about all the good stuff, which is like the majority of these friendships? So I wanted, Bess and Ishao do hate each other sometimes. They say horrible things to each other, and they have these horrible rows. But then they make up, and they look after each other, and they have the kind of love where I think it's the love of a family, where you have these arguments, you say the most despicable things to one another, but you then sit down and have dinner together, or you then go to like your auntie's wedding or something, because that's what family is. It's all of the light and all of the shade, and that's what I wanted that friendship to be in the book, especially because Bess doesn't really get that in her own family setup. It felt really important, even more important, that she had it in her friend.
And I think it's something you portray so beautifully, and like you said, it's with like family, there's that innate trust there of like, doesn't matter what I say, no matter how bad it is, I trust that you're still going to be there at the end of the day. You're gonna like love me for the light and shade. And I think it was so important, and that nuance was so important. Like you say, we so often see this representation of women kind of pitted against each other, and this need constantly for comparison. And I think that goes back to that same narrative of women having to make themselves smaller and not take up as much space. I love the fact that you've taken up so much space in this novel with two really very different but also similar at the same time female characters, and really showed like, as I say, had that almost as the main romantic love, but in a different way, not in the normal romance that you would normally see, but that's still that it's kind of the same the cat and mouse you would have of what you would normally see, like a romantic relationship. And there, I mean, romance in that admiration is
definitely
down.
I would definitely say it is a romantic relationship, because it has all of the hallmarks of it, I think. But it's obviously it's very much a platonic romance rather than like a sexy romance.
I was like, did I miss a few pages?
But I think also, like, that kind of like trust, I'm like, you're so right, it is all about trust. And there is something very romantic about that kind of like obsession with your friends, I think. And I think that period of adolescence where everything is so heightened and everything is like life or death or the end of the world, like, if I get grounded, my life is over. That kind of vibe, I think, really lends itself to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at romance, actually, you look at like the trajectory of friendships and a non-platonic romance, they do follow the similar paths, that excitement and almost that beginning obsession with this person that you've kind of fallen in some ways head over heels for, of like that real admiration of this person, that beginning kind of love, that excitement, getting to know each other, and then almost the trust and the comfort that builds over time, and you can start really being yourself around that person. And again, having like we say, that push and pull that you can have in love of I don't know how to be with you sometimes, but I also don't know how to be without you.
This is it, isn't it? That's exactly what it is.
And that's just so beautifully done and so cleverly done as well. As I say, it's something we don't see enough of, and you almost have taken, whether it was intentional or not, like what would normally be a non-platonic romance, and you've done that in a kind of platonic way, if that makes sense. You kind of flipped it on its head and just given us a different view of it, and something that is so important. And again, something that is hugely underrepresented, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So take up space, ladies, is what and talking about other strong females taking up space, I seriously would implore anyone and everyone to give Careless a read. And what I would say is, if you're not a strong reader, then the audiobook is also incredible. I thought Amber Gadd did a beautiful job of narrating the book. And so lovely to hear again such a strong female voice and do the characters justice. I thought she did a really wonderful job there.
Yeah, I agree. I love Amber to bits. I think she's like the best thing ever.
And just so much. I just love the creativeness that she's put, and that's what's so beautiful about creativity as well. Like you've created this beautiful novel, and you can really kind of get to know and hear your own voice through the writing, and then you've got to bring on another person to bring their creativity in the audiobook version as well. Kind of gives it a layer.
Yeah, definitely. So we partnered with a school called Open Door, which basically runs like opportunities for students from like lower socioeconomic backgrounds who want to get into like drama school. So they'll do things like pay for their auditions, or help them with scholarship funding and stuff like that. And we basically did like an open casting call, and I got to like be on the panel who picked the audiobook reader, which doesn't normally happen. Normally it's like one person picks like someone from the audio team. And I got to listen to all of these like fucking incredible women with all of their different takes on the story. And so we ended up choosing Amber, and she's just like, she has done like the perfect job with the audiobook, and I'm so happy. And actually, so the audiobook has been shortlisted for Audiobook of the Year at the British Book Awards, which is down to her incredible work on the narration. So I agree. I would definitely encourage people to listen to her.
Congratulations to both of you. And I really wanted to bring her up, because I thought, like we said, I think she did an incredible job. And it was so, like, I've read the book and I've heard the audiobook, and it was just so nice to see it. Almost gave it like another layer of creativity and another almost like it's exactly the same words, but it just elevates them in a different way,
like a different take. That's so interesting to hear. I'm so glad you felt like that. That makes me really happy.
She did a beautiful job, I thought.
Oh, amazing. I haven't really been listening to I didn't listen to audio like at all. And then in like the sort of last couple of years, I've gotten really, really into audiobooks. And you're right, it's just like a different experience. But like a really valuable one.
It's not, and it's like when you hear a cover of a song, you can absolutely adore a song, and then you hear someone do a cover on it, and you could have heard that song a million times and it's one of your favorites, but it gives like the lyrics almost a new lease of life.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you start hearing the words in a slightly different way, and it just has like another depth to it.
Yeah.
That maybe you hadn't heard of it before, of like, oh, I've listened to this so many times now, and then actually that word hits a little bit different than it did the first time I heard it. And so beautiful collaboration there of your words and Amber's physical voice. And I absolutely love how she came to narrate it as well. I think that's what a incredibly, again, important process, and just shows again how much thought has gone into this book, and really like what an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel incredibly lucky that I landed where I did with this book, because they have just taken so much care with every aspect of it.
Yeah. So yeah, massive kudos to the publishers and everyone involved there as well, and hopefully we can see much more of it. And clearly there is a demand for it, because look at the reception from it, and it just shows that with it, the irony is it's called Careless, but I think you'll struggle to find a book that has like more care that has gone into it, and then it shows, and the reception to it shows how much it means to people, and the response from it is beautiful. So congratulations to both of you, really. And it really is such a moving and beautifully written story on a topic, like we said, that really needs more coverage. So thank you so much for writing it. And I've been inspired by your creativity since we were teenagers. And although I think you weren't sharing your writing as much then, certainly in the birthday party,
in our smelly gym,
reading your work to the whilst putting on their roller skates. Can I just run an idea? Feedback group. But no, I have been, you've always had such an eloquent way with your words, so it's so nice to see you be able to share your work with so many more people, and your creativity has certainly inspired me. But are there any people that have inspired you on your life journey, whether that's a life mentor you may have had, or someone who inspires you in the writing world?
So I think definitely 100% my PhD supervisors. So when I did my PhD, I did like a creative writing component, which turned out to be Careless. And then I also did like an English sort of like literature component. So my creative writing supervisor was Bernadine Evaristo, who has basically taught me everything good I know about writing. I learned from her, and I think she is the most generous, passionate, caring, supportive, nurturing person who is kind of working at a really, really high level in the industry, and is kind of like universally celebrated and acclaimed. But also she has got so much time for people like me when I was just starting out, and just like help, like basically like putting the ladder out underneath her as she climbs up. Like she's so there to help new writers, emerging writers. And she really elevates women, people of color who are writing. And I think that work she does is just so, like, she doesn't have to do any of it, she really doesn't. And she puts so much time and effort into it. So I think definitely her. And then I think my other supervisor was a woman called Professor Claire Lynch, and she kind of supervised my sort of critical academic English literature component. But she's also a writer herself, so she's written a memoir. It's called Small on Motherhoods, and it's basically about her experience of going through IVF and adoption as part of a lesbian couple. Wow. So her and her partner have kids, and her memoir is basically about the process of having kids with her partner. all of the, you know, ups, downs, trials and tribulations of that.
Yeah.
And it's really, really beautiful, so literary, really poetic. But I think also just her mind is like absolutely fucking insane. Like the way she approaches things critically is like nothing I've ever experienced from any other kind of teacher or, you know, academic at all. She asks questions, but it's questions you would never ever think to ask yourself. And
Wow.
she pushes, but in a way that is just so like caring and nurturing again.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think she just has made me think about my writing, but also how I read in really different ways. So I think definitely both of them have been, you know, the biggest influences. And then I think elsewhere, you know, I was on a mentorship scheme with Penguin for a bit, and I had a mentor from Penguin who was an editor on the children's team.
Yeah.
Because at one point, Careless was going to be a book for teenagers. So I went through this mentorship process to kind of edit it into like a young adult novel. And his name's Tom Rawlinson. He was kind of like my first editor outside of like an academic setting.
Yeah.
And again, just so generous, so encouraging. I don't think I would have ever got published without him. So yeah, probably him as well. And then probably outside of writing, just my mum. I love my mum so much. She's such a babe. So everything I've like done, you know, where I am now is 1000% down to my mum, without a doubt. Because she laid all of the foundation to, like, you know, give me the stability to like, you know, have the tools that I needed, but then also just gave me the confidence, helped me believe in myself, made me think, you know, the world was mine for the taking, all of those things. So yeah, everything I put down to my mum.
I love that. What a beautiful relationship. And that's love, isn't it? And it comes back to trust, like we were talking about earlier. I think it's so much easy. Like people think you just be confident, as if like that's really easy. It's not. I think to be confident, you have to have a foundation of trust first in yourself, and then to be confident, and to have someone that you trust deeply, be confident on your behalf first sometimes before you start trusting yourself, I think is huge.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think I see myself doing that for other people now as well, because I'm kind of, you know, similar to what you were saying about coaching. I'm now kind of like getting into the position where I'm, you know, reading other people's work and kind of like giving that mentorship that I, you know, was at one point getting as like an, you know, a freshly budded writer. So I can see that in how I approach, you know, my own mentoring, and you know, I can see confidence growing in some of the writers that I work with, and it's just really, really wonderful to see. And it's just like, you know, seeing people get what they deserve is just so lovely.
Yes.
Not in like, that sounded really sinister actually, didn't it?
No, but
it's so nice seeing people get what they deserve.
No, I completely that you can have that sometimes, but no, I completely heard that as a positive, and I know what you mean, because like you being a prime example, like I knew how talented you were, but I cannot tell you the amount of happiness and pride I get walking into a bookshop and seeing your book, not only because you are so talented and that needs to be shared, and that also you are such an important and incredible role model of the care experience, but most importantly, like knowing you as a person, you are just such a nice beautiful person, and there's nothing more joyful than seeing just a nice, decent person doing really well.
Exactly, it really is, isn't it? It's like, oh, you deserve this.
And it's beautiful, and I think that like that's also a testament, like you say, to the incredible role models you've had around you, and like how they've kind of blazed that trail, really, like with your mum and with Bernadine, showing that like you don't have to be in competition with each other. Actually, like everyone can win.
Yeah,
and the more you have, like, I think people worry that the more they give, the less they have.
Yeah, absolutely.
The irony of that is when you actually do give and trust that, you know, that we have a kind of almost like a finite pool of that to give, you get so much more back.
Yeah, absolutely. You're so right.
And it's so much more rewarding. And I love that you are now taking opportunities where you can to coach others, because you've benefited from that yourself, and you've seen how much you can get back from it. I think you learn more as well. Like, for example, for me, I'm a coach and I'm educating other people in a way, but by actually, like, it almost reinforces that stuff for you. It cements it more. And also I learn so much from the people I coach.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I definitely find that as well. And I just think, like, just being able to like experience other people's perspectives and how they approach life and how they approach problems and what's important to them is just like enriches your own experience so much. Like, it's just like such a valuable thing to do, and, you know, so rewarding as well.
Absolutely. And I think perspectives is huge. And that's something like for the longest time, I've like, since so young, I've been fascinated by storytelling. I just love learning about other people's perspectives. Creatively, I went down the acting route, and I love, one of my favorite things is being able to step into someone else's shoes and be able to tell a story and learn about a different perspective, like you say. And I think it can give you so many tools in life, like empathy.
And, 100%.
And I think that's huge. And I think the perspectives that storytelling can do is such an important part of, I think, self-development, really.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Careless has quickly become a favorite of mine, which is no small feat, as I am a massive bookworm. So do you enjoy reading books just as much as you do writing them? And what have been some of your favorite books to read? Like, what excites you as a reader?
Oh, that's such a good question. So I think so what I find really annoying is when I'm like really deep into writing something, I really can't read, because whatever I read, if I'm enjoying it, I'm just going to plagiarize it. There's no way around it. You know, it's just like a subconscious thing where I will just like start writing like whatever I'm reading. So
this,
you know,
with the scar seems familiar.
Literally. But yeah, so I avoid reading when I'm like really in the depths of writing, and then it's kind of like when I take a break and like something's gone off to my editor, I'll like try and cram in as many books as possible. So I think recently the things that I've really loved, I recently read Grief is the Thing with Feathers by Max Porter. Oh my God, I have not cried so much at a book, I don't think, ever. I was like on my sofa, I was like snot, sobbing, uncontrollable. I was like shaking. Oh my God, it was so beautiful, but obviously absolutely devastating. I haven't read anything like it. I thought it was so beautiful. And I think his next book has just been announced as well. So I'm very, very excited. Yeah, I can't remember what it's called, because he wrote Lanny, which I haven't read, but I am going to read that. And then, his next book has just been announced. I think it's going to be out next year or something. So yes, I'm going to absolutely sniff that up. And then
ready.
And then I think I really love a good romance. Just because I work at Mills and Boon, I have to love romance. Like, I'm obsessed with Bridgerton. So I love Tessa Dare and Eva Lee, who are like very saucy Regency romance writers, in the same vein as Julia Quinn and Bridgerton, but a bit more American. So I really love those. And then I think So at the moment, I'm reading a book called Drift by Carol Lewis. And her first name, Carol, is Caryl. And she is like the leading writer in the Welsh language. So she writes in Welsh, and she's like really, really celebrated in the Welsh language, like super award winning, loads of accolades. And her first book in the English language is coming out, I think, this month or next month, and it's called Drift. And that is about a uh, a refugee who is basically imprisoned under dubious circumstances at a military base in Wales, and he basically ends up washed up on a beach, and there is in a really isolated fishing town in Wales, and a woman finds him and basically agrees to hide him and kind of nurse him back to health. And it's just a really beautiful story about these really two like divergent experiences coming together, but then also like all of the commonalities in those experiences. And just like so beautifully written, and just like really just a love story. Some of the writing around like the sea and like the setting, the descriptions is like, I wish I could write like that. It's just amazing. But yeah, so I haven't finished it yet, but so far it's very, very good. I'm like halfway through, and I think like some magic stuff's about to happen, which I'm very excited about. So yeah, I think I would recommend those. And then I think like evergreen writers, like Jenny Fagan is an amazing care experienced writer. If you want to expand your care experienced canon, I would 100% recommend her. And then also Lem Zissé, who is more on like the poetry and nonfiction side. So his memoir, My Name Is Why, is amazing and heartbreaking. And is, again, if you're looking for like an insight into a care experience that is different, that is the one to go for.
That was extremely enlightening.
Yeah.
And again, like it's one experience can't count for everyone, but it was a very important perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it shines a light on this really important issue of like record keeping in the care system, which is just like, we could do like a whole other hour just on that. Like, yeah. Let me tell you about record keeping and bureaucracy. I'm sure it's going to be very fun for your listeners. But yeah, so I would recommend him as well, definitely.
Yeah, fantastic author. And I have a huge amount of respect, I think, for anyone who is out there consistently working away at their passion and doing what they can to express creativity in their own special ways. Do you have any specific advice that you can give to anyone who is looking to make a start in following their passion, whether that's writing or some other form of creativity? Was there anything you'd wished you'd known before starting?
Yeah, so I think probably the main thing that is kind of a universal thing, whatever it might be that you're trying to do, is basically find your people. Surround yourself with people who understand what you're trying to do, and maybe trying to do it themselves. Maybe they're a little bit behind where you are, or they're a little bit further ahead, or a mixture of both. Commiserate in your challenges, celebrate your successes together, be that support for one another. That has been, without a doubt, the easiest thing to do, but also one of the most valuable things, like by ratio of how easy it was to get done. And I mean, like for me, it was like Twitter, like just spending probably an unhealthy amount of time on Twitter, but I was able to find, not just writers, but also care experienced writers, and find that community, which I would never have been able to do otherwise. And then being able to improve my writing, develop it, but then also work out where the opportunities were in terms of access and funding and mentorships and that kind of thing, was just like completely changed the game for me.
Yeah.
So that would be my number one piece of advice. And then I think for me, it's like the 10,000 hours thing. You've just got to do it. Like, it doesn't matter how scared you are. Like, it doesn't matter if you think you're shit. You're
Yeah.
not going to get any better unless you just do it.
Yeah.
And, you know, get all of the gunk out to get to the good stuff.
Yeah, and it's so true. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think it's really common for, like, for example, even though Careless is your debut novel and it's doing so well, like, it took so long to write. And I think it can be common for people to see someone's success and be in awe of the outcome of someone's work, but completely ignore the systems that it took to get there, and actually not realize what went into that process. And I think
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
really important, to appreciate people's journeys and the consistent hard work that's gone into it, and not just focus and celebrate on the outcome, because
Oh
that's
yeah,
the
100%. Yeah.
process. The journey is,
Yeah.
I think, a far bigger part of the picture. And I think
Yeah.
especially in today's culture, there's a big thing about instant gratification.
Yeah.
And there's like delayed gratification is so important, and being willing
Yeah.
to put the hours, like you say, and being willing to fail a lot of times to get where you want to go.
Yeah, 100%. And I think as well, like, it's, you know, that kind of social media piece is also like everyone is just putting their best face out there,
Yeah.
right? So like you're only ever seeing people's successes, you're never really seeing their failures, because they're not going to, like, you know, talk about the rejections, or, you know, the stumbling blocks or whatever on Twitter or Instagram. So I think it's important to remember that as well. I've definitely been guilty of, you know, looking at someone who's been really successful and been like, that seems like it was really easy for you.
Yeah.
And you just know, like, it's never easy. It's never easy for anyone. It doesn't come easy. Um, even when it seems like it does.
Yeah, and I think people can compare themselves to where people are now. And
Yeah.
my tip is always compare to people to where they started, because most
Mm,
people aren't that great where they started. Like, try and
mm,
find some people's earlier work and really see how they've progressed, really.
mm.
As well. And I loved your other point as well, of like surrounding yourself with people that you can learn from and help elevate you as well, is really, really important. And I think we've both been very fortunate enough to go to university and to both study creative subjects.
Yeah.
I think personally, one of the greatest gifts that has come from that for me is being welcomed into a creative community,
Mm.
and getting to help continue to cultivate that through our work. So,
Mm.
what does community mean to you, and how has your idea of community changed over the years? How do you continue to try and cultivate that?
Um, I think for me, it's about friendship. So, you know, a lot of my closest friends are creatives, but a lot of us are creatives in like really different ways. So, you know, my best friend is a poet, which I think is probably the closest to what I'm doing. But then,
Mhm.
you know, I have friends who are like musicians, who are like videographers, voice actors, etc. So we're
Yeah,
all doing different things, but we're all kind of like experience the same set of struggles, kind of
yeah.
thing. Because I think it's you can transpose, you know, the obstacles that you might face as a writer with those that you might face as like an actor or, you know, a musician or whatever. Like they vary.
Hmm.
But you know, it's a similar thing. It's about access, it's about getting into the industry, it's about getting in front of people.
Yeah.
Um, so I think, you know, I think we've kind of gravitated towards each other naturally just because of that. And being able to kind of support each other through success and failure has been just really, really important, I think, for all of us.
Yeah.
And then I I think, you know, I found, as I said, when I was at university and it was very like regimented and prescriptive, I found, you know, workshopping and writing groups really, really valuable.
Yeah.
And then realized that when I didn't have that, my writing suffered.
Mm.
Um, so I had to be very intentional about, you know, finding people to workshop with and um, sharing work and, you know, making that work for everyone involved.
Yeah.
So I think now, like, you know, with my writing group, there's not many of us, but we're kind of bringing new people in as well.
Yeah.
And that has been really nice and it's just people that we've kind of like, again, met on Twitter,
Yeah.
or, you know, who we think, oh, okay, you know, we're kind of all like doing a similar sort of thing, or we kind of are all in like similar stages of our journey and all of
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And bringing in like those fresh perspectives and fresh ideas has been, and like fresh voices as well, has been really valuable in helping all of us, I think, to kind of evolve in what we're doing.
Yeah, so I think fresh voices is so important. I mean, as a fictional writer, you've literally been able to create a world with characters that help you tell a narrative that is important to share, right? And the more voices and perspectives you can have, and those kind of fresh eyes, I imagine must be really valuable.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And what a beautiful community you are creating around you. And Kirsty, I cannot thank you enough for sharing your time, energy, and creativity with us today. And it genuinely has made my heart so happy to connect with you again. And I really am grateful for you and your work and what your voice and stories mean to people. And so, how can people continue to support you and your work? I know you also just announced some very exciting news about your second novel. So, what can you tell us about that, and how can people support you on that journey?
Yeah, so yeah, my second book, it's called Love Me, Love Me Not, and it's going to be out in hardback in July. It's also going to be out in ebook and audiobook if those are more your cup of tea. And it is basically about a woman in her 20s called Lucy, who finds out that she is adopted, and her life kind of falls apart as a result of this. And it's really just about her trying to like get her life back together in the wake of this like devastating news. So yeah, it's out in July. I'm quite excited about it. It's available to pre-order now in all of the regular places that you can pre-order books.
Yeah.
And then obviously Careless is out in paperback, ebook, audiobook, and that is available to buy in most good bookshops and anywhere online that you can buy books.
So exciting. So if you have not read Careless, please, please, please read it. Read it. It is such an important book, and so beautifully written. Or you can listen to the incredible Amber Gadd reading it in your ear if you find reading hard to do. The audiobook is also beautiful, so you can support Careless that way. And yeah, I'm so excited for your second novel as well. So get pre-ordering that, people. I know I will be ready, and I'm already ready to be rearranging bookshelves. Getting them sitting side by
God,
side
I love
like
it.
two best friends. Careless has a friend now as well.
I know. Do you know, I said to my editor when I saw the cover, it's like the cover for Love Me, Love Me Not is like Careless's big sister.
Yeah.
I think like the book feels like Careless's big sister as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do like that.
How can people find you on social media? Because obviously you've posted this wonderful information so people can actually see the exciting new book cover. And I have Careless here as well, which is a beautiful book cover and job there. So how can people follow you, find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at Kirsty Capes and on Instagram at kirstykapes.author.
Wonderful. And I will tag your socials in the show notes for this as well, so people can find
great. Thank
your
you.
important information. And I know you're an incredibly busy woman, so I will let you go. But before I do, in addition to the incredible thoughts you have already shared, do you have any parting words of advice that have served you well that you would like to leave the community with?
So my thing that I tell myself, and the thing that goes around my head every day, is hard work pays off. Yeah. That's all I can say. Hard work pays off. You have to put the work in to get the reward. You have to put your 10,000 hours in.
Yeah.
and everything else will come when you do that.
Yes. 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 Dr. Kirsty Capes, I love you, my friend. Thank you so much for connecting with me again. You have so much value to give to the world, and I'm so grateful for how you are sharing it. Thank you for your creativity. Thank you for being such an important voice and role model for so many. Thank you for Bess. I believe she's the heroine we needed. Thank you for Ishao for giving women a friendship we can relate to. And thank you for caring so deeply. There is absolutely nothing careless about the way you're showing up in the world. And thank you for being my kind of person.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've loved it.
Oh, you are so welcome, my friend. It's so good to talk to you. And yeah, get pre-ordering, people.